Hello. Welcome to the church we hope for. We're going to start off with a song of musical praise. For those that are able, feel free to stand and will join me in singing. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Sing worthy of all the praise. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Let's sing Jesus the name. Jesus the name above every other name. Sing Jesus. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Sing worthy of every breath, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Sing holy, holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Sing Jesus the name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Sing worthy, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Sing holy, holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those. Let's sing holy, holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Lead me. Sing, I will build. Holy, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those. Sing holy, holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the only name who could ever name. Sing Jesus, and Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. God, we give you this Sunday. We give you every day. Teach us what it means to be liberated, to be planted in you. And so we give you today and the rest of the service. And be with us. In your Son's mighty name we pray. Amen.
You can grab a seat. Welcome to the Church We Hope For. My name is Mondo. It's been a while since I've been here. I got a thumbs up and a woohoo. I, along with 3 others, 4 in total, were a part of a pilgrimage in Spain known as the Camino de Santiago. So we are making our re-entry slowly. I had the gift of last week of just sitting and not knowing what was going to happen in our service, which is weird because it's been a while since I've had that privilege. Today, hopefully Inez fills that privilege because she is away at a friend's birthday. And I have a feeling a lot of people got invited this birthday. We won't say who it was and whose it is. But I told her, I said, if there's not a lot of people, we'll know who got invited. Anyways, she's away, but we are grateful to be here. We say every week that we are a beloved community, moved by the Spirit to follow the life, love, and justice of Jesus. That is a way in which we confess how we are formed, who we are, in our being and in our becoming. Some fun things that have happened since I was gone. There's been some conspiring. And I love it because it's just really people getting activated. But Alicia McCormick, who is not here, but will be preaching next week as the 20th woman to preach at the Church We Hope For. So please come back. Dr. McCormick will be here. She doesn't like when you call her that, but she's got her PhD. And we'll be talking about becoming familia. And this week we're going to be talking about liberating our story, which is the second to last value in this teaching series that we call our being and becoming. So all of this is working itself out as we taper into the end of summer. I do want you to know, and it looks like some of you got the notes, but the coolest places in the room are right under these 3 ACs. So if you're feeling a little, tackiness, just move down a few rows. It'll help you, as well as I have some small type font slides today. So for those in the front or those with seeing issues, I'm getting there. I just bought my first pair of readers. They're right here. I bought them in Portugal. So I'm astounded by how much clearer things are this close. It feels liberating. We're going to talk about liberation. That feels liberating. But we're just so grateful for those that are here and those that will remain to come as we continue in our worship service. Hannah is going to lead us in our call to worship. And then I'll be back up shortly.
Please rise in body and spirit if you're able. I'm going to read the first lines, and then we read together the lines in bold. O Lord, let my soul rise up to meet you.
As the day rises to meet the sun.
God, your testimonial of liberation is here.
Let every deed we do today rise up as a prayer to empower women.
Come, let us sing to the Lord.
Let us shout for joy to the rock of our salvation. And open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, as I want to see you. As I want to see you. Reveal yourself. Let's sing, open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, yes, I want to see you. Yes, I want to see you. Let's make that a prayer. Open the eyes. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Oh, open the eyes of my heart. Yes, I want to see you. Yes, I want to see you. Sing open. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Oh, open the eyes of my heart. Yes, I want to see you. Yes, I want to see you. Sing to see you high. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Sing holy, 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 holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Sing holy. Sing holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Sing open. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. Yes, I want to see you. Sing yes, I want to see you. Sing open. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Oh, open the eyes of my heart. Yes, I want to see you. Yes, I want to see you high, to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, 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 to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Let's declare, God, you are holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Sing holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Yes, I want to see you. So McKenna introduced this next song a couple of weeks ago, and as I reflected on what Pastor Armando is going to be speaking today, it just reminded me of being rooted in how my story has been reflecting what God has been doing. So we're going to sing this song called Firm Foundation, about how God doesn't fail, how God is always there. Feel free to join if you know the words, and if you don't, to just soak in what God is speaking. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. Let's sing, I've still got joy.
'Cause I've still got joy in chaos.
I've got peace.
I've
Got peace that makes no sense.
so I won't
Be going under.
I'm
Not held by my own strength.
'Cause I built my life on Jesus.
He's never.
He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would he fail now?
He won't. He won't. Let's declare he won't.
He won't.
He won't.
He won't fail.
He won't fail. Sing, he won't. He won't. Do you believe? He won't. He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. Sing, Christ is
my
firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. When everything around me shaking, I've never been more blessed that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. Sing, he won't. He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't. Let's declare it. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't fail. Sing, rain came.
came and blew. My house was built on you, and I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through.
Sing, rain came.
This rain
Came
came and blew, and my house was built on you, Jesus. I'm
Safe with you, I'm gonna make it through. Sing, rain came, rain came, rain blew. My house was built on you. I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it. Sing, I'm gonna make. I'm gonna make it through, 'cause I'm standing strong on you, 'cause I'm gonna make it through, 'cause I'm standing built on, 'cause Christ is my firm foundation. He's the rock on which I stand. Everything around me shaking, as I've never been more blessed, as I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. Do you believe? He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't. You believe He won't fail. He won't fail. Cause this little light of mine, cause I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Feel free to get loose. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let's sing everywhere. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Whoa, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let's pick it up, this little light. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Whoa, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let's pick it again. This little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Sing, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Amen. God, we know you have so much to free. We know you have so much to liberate. We are so excited to learn more about what you have planned and everything that you are doing today. So speak through your servant, Armando, and we just give you all the glory, all the honor and praise. And in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. You may be seated.
All right, so keeping it loose, 3 key changes. Was that 3? Was that 2? You just tricked us? The third one was a return? Felt like it was higher. I might have been singing off key on that part. That invitation that Jason and Hannah just gave us, we're going to keep it going. All right? So the thing I forgot to say, my ADD got the best of me. When I was mentioning Alicia, there was a point beyond her. I was excited about next week, her preaching next week. Again, is the 20th woman at the church we hope for. Number 19 was someone we all love, Jasmine Eltini, and her family's here with us. So if you guys can just say hello to some of her family that's here, her mom and her cousin. Feel free to meet them. We're so very thankful for Jasmine and the life that you have stewarded in her. And we love Seth too. You know, he's like the best package deal ever. We didn't know Seth for a long time. He was like the guy up north, and they were engaged, and teacher. We heard all these wonderful things. And since he's been here, which, when is your 1-year anniversary? It's coming up soon? October. Yay. Not quite here, but yes, almost. But until last October, we didn't get to live life with Seth, and he is such a gift. So welcome you all. As I said, we are nearing the end of this 8-week teaching exploration that we're calling our Being and Becoming. And for those that are new, you may not know that, and I shared this, the second week was the last time I was here, is that this is sort of a Church We Hope For tradition. For the last 3 summers, we have done the exact same series in different ways, where we're parsing out and riffing on our values or our mission or our vision, aspects of our church that we confess regularly. The difference with this year is that at the start of the year, we had sort of a storytelling revision where we introduced branding that was more in line with who the spirit of our church was. That included language and the website. And out of that, we took 4 values that we had, and we sort of nuanced them to become 8, which are these 8 things, which is radical love as a value, centering the margins as a value, peaceful resistance as a value, sacred solidarity, empowering women, reimagining worship, which we talked about last week, and then this week, liberating our stories, and then next week, all of this culminating in the sense of becoming familia, becoming familial, interwoven with one another in ways that are reinforced by these 8 values. So today, we're talking about liberating our story. And, this value, along with the other 8, these weren't, these were part of a language audit that I was doing with our staff, just as a way of what is the language that's already existing? And how do we take from that? Rather than we're not trying to start some cool new thing, but it's all of the artifacts for these 8 values, including today's, they were already breathing and living within our church. They were connected to stories and peoples and bodies and cultures in our church and languages in our church and identities in our church. And we sort of pulled from these and we started developing these 8 things with the goal of letting it appropriately give a standing ground for lots of other things. So while there's 8, you could really parse out all sorts of things from these values. Empowering women is, I said this last time, that was so clear in the DNA of our church. You saw it, you felt it. It was preached, it was shared, but it had not yet been named and formalized as a significant pillar in our church. And so that was sort of some of the heart behind all of what we're doing. And today, again, we're exploring liberating our stories, which we define this way, and you'll find this on our with the definitions of all of our values on our website. It should be up there. It says, we seek to be a safe place for holistic healing where doubt, unlearning, relearning, rest, deconstruction, and reconstruction are welcome as a normal integration between who we are and who we are becoming. I can tell you right now, I don't know that I've ever been a part of church where doubt was named in a value. There might have been a spirit of that in some far-off corner of the church somewhere. And oftentimes, I think I was creating that corner from my own story and my own vantage point. But this is a part of our story that I personally have experienced. So, my story as a pastor at the Church We Hope For doesn't start that way. It starts off as me just visiting my friend's church after a really painful season with the previous church where I had resigned after being a pastor for 17 years. And I fought hard for this church. It wasn't anything I did. I was actually away starting a nonprofit and kind of still connected. So a lot of what happened and unfolded, these pain points and these really ugly things kind of, it was during COVID, which was really a hard time for a lot of people. And when you mix in unhealth, it just becomes this really combination of just an erosion and compromise of things that your church stands for. And that's sort of what happened. And after 3 months of like putting myself in the middle to try and advocate and be this mediator of something, some sort of life or healing, I released that, not knowing ever in my adult life what it meant to like not be a pastor, because I became a pastor very young. To have that identity that I love and sort of like let it go. And it was right before Lent. So, it was funny because I gave up church for Lent, which is like the thing you get to keep during Lent, Maddie knows. But I thought it would be fun to like say this to people because it was like the reaction was funny. But honestly, I did feel like I was experiencing this death that Lent sort of helped me, accept, or at least begin to accept. And I thought, because I'm a pastor, I'll give God 40 days. Let's see, by Easter, I'm hoping I'm going to have some real good, like, clarity, answers, healing, all of these things. Did not happen. Easter came and Easter went, and I didn't feel resurrection quite yet. I didn't feel the grandiosity of the day. And 40 days became months and months and months where our family didn't go to church. Then my body was like used to not going to church for a while, which is weird because, and we offer that provision here, you don't have to come. But I very much, was always there. So it's like when my body wasn't somewhere at 10 a.m. in the morning, really 8 a.m. in the morning, started to feel like weird and disjointing. And it was just a weird process. So on a whim, I came to the church we hoped for, just to say hi to Inez. I had known Inez from a church planting network, and it was at the old space, the most basic service ever. Nothing significant. There was beauty, there was community, there were people, there were songs, there was worship, there was Jesus, there was the Spirit. But it was just the most ordinary thing, and I felt like God just said, this voice that said, like, it's okay to be here if you want. And it was the same cadence and voice, and I tell this story often because it's so significant, of when I was at my church not knowing what to do, and that same voice, this maternal voice, this female voice, with this soft cadence just said, it's okay to release this, And so that's my story. I got to sit where you are for a whole year, maybe 2, I think, before, it just was this, part of my story that affected both my wife and my daughter, who were now at a church for the first time where their dad wasn't a pastor, which was really nice for a while. Now we're back to that story. But as the Lord had it, stepping in to be a part of our church in a pastoral way was not anything I anticipated. I was saying no to pastoral jobs that were falling in my lap from the sky, those types of stories, because I did not want to leave our church. And I knew that accept a pastoral job again meant to so this is my story because I got to be where you are and literally watch people liberated in sharing their story, in centering their culture and using their native tongue, in embodying forms of worship that they had gleaned from and received and inherited, in making sense of sometimes what felt like the unsensible of what was happening in the world, of lamenting live in church, and just having a service where we grieved and cried and lamented, as opposed to just kind of same old, welcome to church, we're just going to have the same sort of liturgy. So this is really one of those things that I have seen and witnessed and bore witness to, and then stepped into within my own story that needed liberation. Liberation from former places where maybe we were talking about multi-ethnic things and cultural things, but hey, let's not go too far, right? Stories where I've been able to tell indigenous Chumash creation myths here and how I see Jesus in them. I don't know that I would ever have had a chance to do that. And one of the most beautiful things, and I was thinking about this, not in my notes, the high trust at this church is really astounding. I have never ever vetted anything I've ever shared, made, created, artwork through anyone at this church. When we ask people to step into writing something, which you're going to hear today from Kristen, we don't say, hey, let me proof that. Let me make sure the tone and voice is on. Well, what do you mean you're going to do this culturally? Well, what do you mean we're going to center cha as a thing? What do you mean, and it really is astounding. Sometimes I probably I'm like, hey, is this okay? If we show this version of Mary during the Day of the dead with a skull face, it's like, I know some of you guys are scratching your head, like, where did I show up to? But I promise it's all in the name of Jesus and in the name of liberating our stories with Jesus at the center. Okay, so here's the thing, is that for many of us, you know what I'm saying. You're here for the same reasons. You've experienced similar layers of liberation. You've experienced, because you yourself also have similar stories. You have watched people share, and in that healing comes, and then yet as you hear and receive, there's a form of healing that's reciprocal and cyclical with these things. And I've been there, you've been there, we've heard those stories and those testimonies. It's a beautiful thing, but so many of us, just to name a few, have been hurt really bad and wounded by the church or a church or an oppressive system under the guise of Christianity. There are women who have been crushed, really crushed by patriarchy. There are people of color who have been diminished and minimized by whiteness. Not just, it is not pejorative for if you're white, then this, like systems that have been stewed within the American church and expression of church that have either deliberately, explicitly, or implicitly diminished and minimized dear people of color. Queer siblings that have been demoralized and demonized by toxic theology. A prophetic witness of the church that's been compromised by things like Christian nationalism and American exceptionalism. And it's just to name a few. You could fill in the blank with lots more, I'm sure. And there's so many people in these pews that are here and not here, that are possibly watching online, that have these stories, that fill these pews, that show up trying to make sense of some of this stuff still. And yet so many of you, I'm so moved often by your ability to remain connected to any church, to any faith, to any Christ that has been compromised. There are some stories where I'm like, some people are just being like, I'm still here, and that's what they can confess right now. And I'm like, man, you are so welcome, and I've been there, and you can remain there. There is nothing, like when we talk about this, understand this isn't anecdotal for me where I'm just trying to do some pew research, with Barna, and then come back and report some skewed, statistic, because all of that depends on what churches they're surveying, so the data means something. These are real stories, names that I know I hold, and it's my story in our church. So I wanted to start there, because when we talk about exploring this value, being a church that seeks liberation, it comes from this place. It comes from my own story and my own body. I was trying to make sense of where to start. In fact, Kristen was collaborating with me early on in the week, and she said, hey, she texted me directly, she said, so what are you doing this weekend? And I'm like, I got nothing but this verse. And it was so weird because this verse kept popping up in my head. And it was this verse that is part of this old world. This verse that I learned, meaning it was given to me from really my very first church experience, which happened in junior high, which is this verse from 2 Corinthians 3:17, and it says, now the Lord is Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord, there is freedom. And this is one of those, in and out cup verses. It kind of is one of those floating verses that can kind of just obligatorily mean something without any context. And you can find your own meaning. And really, part of the old world and the old story, which it came and arose out of my small Pentecostal church in Simi Valley, California. In the early 2000s, I had just, my mom got saved, radically saved in this small Pentecostal church. In my mind, every church was a small Pentecostal church. I didn't know there was any difference in Christianity for too long. 11th grade, I think I met a Presbyterian. And it was like, what? You don't roll around the floors? Are you even Christian? And it's just because Christianity is a received faith. We receive an intake from these places that give it to us. for better or for worse. So this verse, it was part of my former youth group. I had just graduated out, and then I started to step into like formalized ministry with youth kids after like the third youth scandal. If you know, you know. And I was just trying to make sense of this world and help my church and serve these kids. And honestly, youth group in the 90s and the late 1900s really was meaningful for me. I can't remember one sermon or teaching, but I remember community. I remember the relationships there, even though there were very painful and awful things that happened out of that formation and received place. But, you know, it's the early 2000s. I'm 19 or 20, and I stepped into this. And we, of course, needed to create a new logo. And long story short, we renamed our youth group, and we needed a verse to go with it because you couldn't have a logo without a verse back then. That's just how it went. Anything you created that was Christian needed to have a verse that was connected to it, right? And it needed to have probably, if there was a T in the word, it was a cross. That was just the most creative thing we could do. So, like, I stepped in, and this verse was, I think it was like a concordance we found it, you know? And it just became a verse that stood out because of this reason. And this is the verse that was kind of, like, re-emerging this week. And honestly, I was a bit agitated, and I'm like, nah, there are so many better ways of talking about liberation in the scriptures. Like, that's my jam. I could parse this out in so many better ways. And God, the Spirit just wouldn't let me release this verse. And I think it was because I needed to, like, pay attention and re-enter and reread and even maybe read the context, which this verse is connected to actually a beloved passage out of 2 Corinthians 3 that I've preached here at our church before. I didn't quite get to verse 17, but this is out of this place where I'm trying to make sense of this verse, and the Spirit just kept bringing it up and making me pay attention, and part of that, I think, is because, you know, this verse, it holds history. We have a lot of therapists and experts in the therapy world, and even me talking, it just sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about because there's so many, like, letters behind these worlds and things like LMFT and different things like that. But we know that there are things attached to things, that they can trigger us into places. And this is one of those verses that reminds me of this old world, which does bring up some grief, some real grief. I don't have time to go into the grief, but I actually, I've felt proud that I moved beyond this world, and in some ways very reactively when I was younger. Like, burn the place down. I never want anything to do with this thing again. And then there's also, like, you know, through my life actually lived, I'm 45 this year. I'm 45? I think so. In the last 10 years, I've revisited some of these old worlds, and I can actually hold some gratitude. It didn't come easy. I can actually hold some gratitude. I can actually see some provisions. This is actually the first place where I saw women lead. And then I left that for complementarianism, right? This is the most diverse church I've ever been a part of. And then I left it for, like, Reformed theology, which leans a little white, I'm not gonna lie, you know? So, like, when I revisit this place, I can hold some gratitude and some nuance to this old world while also expanding some of this, because I haven't always had gratitude. And when I trace the Spirit's faithful provision, I can see how the Spirit, how she kept escorting me more and more towards the living Christ. And I can look back at my spiritual journey with gratitude. I can look at these old worlds and ways and words with healed eyes that point me towards a Jesus that warrants a better Christianity. I don't have to burn the thing down to achieve the next thing. There are things I can release, things I no longer affirm, things that I will reject and protest, but through the Spirit of love. And then also understand just the provision of things that I might not know the name Jesus apart from these people in this church, and certain things about Jesus and the church through that. So I want to revisit this verse because I want to read it in a different translation. Because, like, why do anything but the NIV when you were young in the 1990s? But this is kind of an amalgamation of translations that I created. It says, "Now the Lord is Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberation." Remember the word that was there before, it was freedom. That's most of the time gets translated freedom. But the idea behind the word is liberation. But my old world, in my old way of thinking, I could never and it's wild, I could never read freedom and see liberation. They were almost like, they were never synonymous in that world. And I don't know why. But if you pay attention to the church now, we often see this problem, that words have meanings and interpretations and ways and worlds behind them. So you will see clearly a Jesus who is prophetic and centers justice and love, right? That's part of our mission, the life, love, and justice of Jesus. And you will see worlds that will defend that there is, in the church today, that empathy is toxic, that love can be toxic, and the theology behind it. So there's this still happens here and now, but part of this is to understand that like freedom, the true emancipation of bondage, comes where God is proximate to. Like the proximity of God brings this liberation. And then we get to define this through the constructs of love and justice and equity and charity and sacrifice, a cross-shaped way of understanding liberation, right? That is not just merely spiritual or part of an equation for some afterlife thing, but something that is here and now, social and holistic. And of course, I'm preaching to the choir. So when we get to this idea of the liberation of our stories, you have to understand that Paul, again, he's trying to defend his apostleship. I won't go into that. But what you need to know is that he's creating and contrasting old worlds. The old world of Torah, he's not rejecting Torah, but he's talking about how it's been expanded, and there's this new way of seeing the world that includes Torah, but it's summed up in love of God and love of neighbor, which sums up the law and the prophets, which Jesus says. So he says that we have all who, with unveiled faces, we contemplate, which is this idea of reflecting deeply in a mirror. I'm going to explain that in a second. The Lord's glory, which when you see glory, words have meaning, so that might be a weird meaning. Some of us have heard that we're too wicked and wretchful to look at God's glory and God's face, but that's not true. Here it's saying that not only can we look at it with unveiled faces, and then we become that. So that seems weird that if we think that. But when we look at the Lord's glory, God's brilliant face, we are being transformed into Christ's image with ever-increasing glory. So this continues, which comes from the Lord who is Spirit. This is just an easy way of saying that the whole goal of who we are in Christ is to become the likeness of Christ. That the goal of Christianity is not to become biblical. Say this very slowly. It's not to become more biblical. It's to become Christ-like. And believe it or not, there can be a difference in being biblical, which carries these things, and being Christ-like. Now, to be Christ-like is not a rejection of the Scriptures. It's to understand that Jesus becomes the essence of how we see and orientate ourselves towards this, which leads to love, which leads to liberation, freedom. So I wanted to give some scriptural grounding here to talk about this, because it's this idea of contemplation, to look deeply. So one of the translation talks about looking deeply into a mirror. When we think of mirror, we probably think really good clarity. Right? I mean, there's like those 10 times magnification mirrors. You ever look in those things and you're like, oh my God, there's like a whole world on my nose that exists with creatures and like it's bizarre when you look that deeply into a mirror. But an ancient mirror was not one with clarity. In fact, it was almost like looking at water moving. You could only get it hammered down, a piece of metal hammered down so much that you had to really diligently look in a mirror, because it's almost like a funhouse mirror with these dents, to kind of like gaze deeply to understand your essence. And this is what the language that Paul is using when he talks about contemplating with unveiled faces, that we see deeply into the brilliant face of Creator, and it transforms us into that image more and more and more, which brings liberation of who we are. It's not at the expense of who we are. It brings freedom of who we are. And it heals us and it transforms us. We will be different, but that doesn't mean your skin color changes. That doesn't mean your family of origin story changes. Like, it comes with a story. We are vehicles of story. Our bodies are vehicles of story. So we cannot liberate until we let go and grab a hold of Christ, is kind of what Paul's saying. But here's the thing, because sometimes we hear that and that means, oh, you're no longer Filipina. You know, we're just now one and the same in Christ. But here's the thing, what Christ then does through the Spirit is that the Spirit of love and liberation then escorts us back towards ourselves, towards others, towards creation, towards love, towards peace, towards flourishing, towards the vision of shalom. And this is the Christian story of what we step into. This is the way in which we are trying to make sense of this. The Epistle of James says something very similar, and I'm going to read it really quickly, and you'll likely notice this. Next passage. There we go. Do not merely, you know this, you've probably heard a million sermons on this, and in fact, we're going to riff on this a little bit. Do not merely listen to the word so you deceive yourself. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word and does not do what it says is like someone who looks, it's the same imagery, now James is talking, at his face in a mirror, which is to look deeply, slowly. After looking at himself, immediately goes away and forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law, which is love, that gives liberty, freedom, liberation, and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, living it, embodying it, they will be blessed by what they do. This is one of the earliest books in Christianity that James is talking about the very same thing. That this is not merely about, and this is where we've heard it preached, hearing and doing, and not questioning anything, no doubts, but it's a life that looks so deeply into the what is being said and taught and read, and then roots itself in the likeness of Jesus through that. Because again, Christianity is a received faith, so you cannot just assume even that I am spitting out like flawless truth to you all. Okay? Like, just because I say it doesn't mean you do it. And then I use this to weaponize you towards that. This is about slowing down and looking so intently that you slowly contemplate the perfect law of love and then orientate yourself in embodying that. You see, when you see perfect law, there are preachers that are going to tell you exactly what that is, but it's just love. For James, it's love. It's love God, love neighbor, which fulfills all that the law was trying to teach us and show us and tutor us to. And it's the dream of the prophets. So here's what I want to do. I want to do a weird little TED Talk time, if this is okay. Okay. So I've been workshopping something that I presented in a few other spaces and processing really kind of this idea of Christianity as a received faith. You cannot escape that. It's almost true for anything about who we are, that we receive it, and we receive it with certain benefits and hindrances, like anything. And then our goal is not to fix that, but to pay attention and live an honest life. Okay, putting on the readers now. I can't see anything past 5 feet right now, so you could be falling asleep, do whatever. So I want to talk about this idea of making space for explorative formation. But before that, we're going to kind of talk about how I've seen and understood sort of a conventional formation process. So you can go to the first slide. So this is where, if you're far away, this might be small font. If you're young, it's not a problem. But if you want to come closer, you can. But you can just listen to what I'm saying. So a conventional formation process, sometimes the way I see it is it's delineated down to a process of educating and then replicating. being hearers and doers of the word. You just heard me talk about James. You have to know that in the late 90s and early 2000s, this was everything that was preached. There were so many churches and pastors that felt radical by trying to get their churches to not just be hearers, but doers, right? So don't just show up. And, I was a part of a church. My first pastoring job of 12 years was part of a very famous pastor, and this was his jam. And he wrote books on this and all of this stuff. So, if we could just get people to hear the right things and then do the right things, the world would be fixed. You would be fixed. Our church would grow. We could do all kinds of cool things now and have a chocolate fountain in the lobby and, give away iPods every week and all this cool stuff in the name of Jesus, of course. So it was basically hear this, do this. And kind of there was this mantra that, you just got to go back to the word. And you just need to read things. So I would read something like 1 Corinthians, no context, read that. And then, I got to dictate what that meant. We're going to kind of get there. Kind of under the mantra of the Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it. Anyone ever heard that? Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it. But there are so many presuppositions behind that are actually dangerous. Because what is the thing that you are saying the Bible says? What is the way in which you're hearing that? What is the way in which you believe that? How does that affect the world, your neighbor, those next to you and those outside? How does that affect the culture, the society, the disparities, the injustices, if you're even asking those questions? And then that settles it. It's just the Bible, it's just plain, it's just clear. It's just clear, the Bible says it. I believe it, that settles it. But because, again, Christianity is a received faith, so you can go to the second slide. This idea of hearing and doing, it has a tone and voice. We can give texture to that. You can think back to your own experience of that. It might have been hospitable and nice and kind, but the implications might have been atrocious or domineering or led to some sort of harm that is connected to your story. There's all sorts of ways in which, because Christianity is a received faith, there's a tone and voice of how we heard what it means to be a hearer or to hear and to do. How discipleship and educating and replicating is about hearing and doing, because these are the places that formed us, the traditions that formed us, the people, the pastors, the Bible translations, the schools we went to, the theology, the books we read, all of that. The people we heard preaching, or the person we heard preaching, because sometimes it's very univocal in a church. You can go to the next slide. And what begins to happen is there's this undercurrent of fundamentalism that starts to happen. Fundamentalism, I don't mean this pejoratively. It sometimes gets used now pejoratively and just as a knock. Oh, you're a fundamentalist if you don't think the way I think, or if you're not as progressive as I am, you're just a fundamentalist, you're just a fundamentalist. And here's the thing, is fundamentalism is, it's for everybody. Anybody can be a fundamentalist. It's not about correct theology or right answers. At the purest form of it, that's what we're trying to get to. So I'll just read this. Fundamentalism is a branch of any religion, ideology, movement, including things like atheism, that become dogmatic, militant, and repressive. And the hope of this is purging perceived threats from you or your community, or heresies of those you've identified as opponents. That's kind of the idea of fundamentalists. And I've been a part of fundamentalist communities. I've been a raging fundamentalist at times where I didn't care about your story or the nuances of who you were in your body, your culture, and things like this. I just thought the Bible said it because I heard it, and that settles it. And therefore, I'll defend it, even if that hurts your feelings or harms you, because the gospel is offensive, man, And we have all sorts of brilliant ways in which we now get people to listen and obey. So hearing and doing now becomes about you listening and obeying the dominant voice in this church, the dominant spirit, the commentaries I read, the people that I believe are right. Now I am regurgitating this stuff, and we'll kind of see that happen in the next slide. Because now with fundamentalism, you get this reactive certitude. That's kind of this undercurrent of fundamentalism, because we live in a reactive society of culture wars. And if you grew up in the church in the last 80 years, you understand this very clearly in America. And now reactive certitude, meaning we're now right about what we believe and what we say and what we do. And we have the truth, our denomination has the truth, our whatever. Now becomes a process of listening and obeying is about dictating to you things that you now regurgitate. And I'm using those words to have that sting. It's not about free thinking. It's not about doubt. It's not about your story. It's not about your feelings. All right, we hear that now. It's about I dictate what truth is because I understand God has a direct thing to my brain, my fingertips, my Bible, my commentaries. And your goal, if you want to be a part of this community, is you regurgitate. And this is really like, these are all layers of how things kind of progress, in my opinion. And now the worst of that is when things become utterly toxic. So fundamentalism becomes toxic under this. And you can go to the next slide, Nicole. Because now we have toxic fundamentalism that, I do have a quote here. Let me read this really quick. No, you can go to that quote. I forgot. I don't have it in here because I printed it too early. Sorry. So let me read you this quote really quick. Because here's the thing. My goal is not to give you notes for things that you can now judge and be like, oh, you're a regurgitator. You're you're missing the point. You're now a fundamentalist. The point is that anybody gets threatened by this stuff. When your whole worldview is called into question by anything, by a tragedy, by some unforeseen circumstance, by something that is a deep, dark thing you are doing, or some outside thing that now becomes repressive, toxic, and enforces, we feel like it's all unraveling and we don't know what to do. And belief can feel that way. Belief can feel that way. So I want to read this by Dr. Pete Enns from his book, The Sin of Certainty. It says this: our beliefs about God, which is to say our thoughts about God, are precious to us because they give us a sense of who we are and our place in this chaotic world. And we often can't imagine any other way of being us. So when our beliefs are threatened, the instinct, understandably, is to guard them fiercely, to resist any move as long as possible, to make the stress go away, and to stay in the comfort of our familiar spiritual homes. And I offer that as a gift, not as something we can put on someone else. We all have felt this and feel this when the most purest things we hold are called into question, or they begin to feel like they're unraveling. So you can go now to the next slide. So this becomes toxic now under this because you're just going to defend it till the end. It doesn't matter who you are. To the highest of things of Christian nationalism and American exceptionalism, this means now we can bomb people, we can dehumanize people, we can say we're right, we're pure, we're killing in the name of God, and you don't count the dead when God's on your side. That's to quote Bob Dylan. So now go to the next slide. So we have toxic fundamentalism that is reinforced by listen and obey, dictate, regurgitate, which is all sort of culminated through certitude or certainty. It's now about certainty and coercion. So my job is to fearmonger. The world is crazy and dangerous, and if everything's a slippery slope and there's sharks in the water. So don't read that guy. That's a false teacher. That's this, And everyone's like, the fear, I heard this my whole life. The sharks are in the water. Don't get too close to the edge. Don't slip. No one ever questions the slope, right? No one goes, is there a more Christ-like slope here where sharks aren't in the water? Can we reimagine this a little bit? But sometimes, again, we've received this in so many deep ways that our therapists and PhD students can probably riff off of. So the worst of this is about certainty. There's a great quote by Brian Zahn where he says, certitude to faith is like paint by numbers is to art. If you love paint by numbers, sorry. But, it's the most basic rendered way of just saying red only goes here. Don't put blue, don't put yellow. So you get that, okay. So I want to extend this quote. Under this toxic fundamentalism, under certitude and coercion, we've felt this. So Pete goes on and he says this. He says, so we will resist all of this change because of the fear to protect it. He says, but in resisting, we may actually be missing an invitation to take a sacred journey. That where we let go of needing to be right and trust God regardless of what we feel or don't know. And really, that's the heart of what I'm trying to name here, is that we want to provide space. So real quickly, I want to go through an explorative formation process. I forgot about this. I feel like I'm going long, but I do want to hear. We're going to save that question for the end, if that's okay. And I have a guest that's going to come up and join me. Okay, real quickly, explorative formation. What I want to do is create that room for that contemplation that both Paul named in 2 Corinthians 3 and then James names, that deep look into something. In fact, I missed my definition of contemplation from the CAC. Contemplation is learning how to offer, and I love this quote, a long, loving look at the real. A long, loving look at reality. About who you really are, what life really is, in all of its honesty, its pain points, its griefs, its gratitudes, its provisions. It's a long, loving look at the real. So we're not condemning ourselves, we're not judging ourselves, we're not judging these worlds. We're just sitting with that and asking the living Christ to come into that. So we're creating room for contemplation here. You can go to the next slide. So now I'm going to introduce two more things here. So I want to introduce, rather than just being about hearing, doing, listening, obeying, what if we created room for imagination and wisdom? Which I think is actually the way in which the scriptures and Jesus is re-entering even his traditions around Torah. It says things like, you've heard, but I tell you. Okay? He's tapping into his ancestral story, his traditions, his Torah, but he ends up expanding and nuancing that beyond anything. And only Christ could do that. Anyone else literally was a heretic in that world. And ultimately, they do think he's a heretic, and they will crucify him for this. But imagination and wisdom, space to rethink our convictions. Rethinking is an invitation that Jesus is constantly inviting people into. When he looks at someone, he knows what they need. It's a blind person. They're coming up to him. But he says, what do you want? And he lets them name desires. We're told our desires are bad, and we should vet our desires through, some system that says, it's selfish for you to ask for healing. It's selfish for you to think of yourself in this situation. Jesus doesn't say that to Bartimaeus. Jesus didn't say that to Nicodemus, who comes to him at night, and he says, you got to reimagine everything. It's like re-entering your mother's womb and being born again. Pay attention to the wind as it blows. You can't see it. You can't dictate it. You can only get caught up in it and recognize as the wind blows. Such is the Spirit. You can't control the Spirit. So this is some of this right here that if we make space for wisdom and imagination to help us rethink our convictions, because we have convictions. We have things that we settle on. We have the things that we will defend, hopefully in the name of love. So again, if you saw that, love now shows up because this is all in the name of love, not in the name of being right. And then we also begin to reframe our convictions. So if it's now about reimagination and looking at things that you've been told aren't right or can't be right or could never be right, and yet in your body you've always felt agitated about this thing, about America dropping bombs on foreign countries. It's always agitated you. But the systems and the powers, and even those that have immersed churches at times, kind of say, no, but this is a good thing because we're spreading, I don't know how it could be good. But I do think there was a time in my life, in fact, I have a really sad journal entry on 9/11 that I wrote that was just stewed in some American nationalism that I didn't even know where it came from, but it was just there in my body. So I don't subtract myself, but what if we gave room to reimagine the world? Not just for others, but for you, for your story, for your gender, for your sexuality, for your desires. Okay, we're not talking about hedonism in some grandiose way. We're just talking about being human, the invitation to actually be human. to carry the stories in your ancestral lineage, whether it be from Scotland, which Janet last year with Mike went and revisited this ancestral place, in this beauty, or me going to Mexico, or me growing up on Chumash land, or you and whatever your story, or your the things you hold dear. What if you had space to rethink some of this stuff, and you didn't feel like you were, and again, I'm using this pejoratively, you're going to go to hell, right? I don't believe in hell in that way. You can ask me more about that later, but that's not the point of today. But that was something I had to look back into the scriptures and say, is that really there? And then what if you could trust the wisdom, not just of you, but your family, your ancestry, your culture, your traditions, your churches, your rabbis, your teachers, your spiritual directors, or just, again, I'll go back to yourself. Like, you didn't have to question everything. And it wasn't about you being right or wrong, because the goal is not that. So what if we just had time and space to discern the counter narratives? Because here's the thing with imagination. The second you start naming it, there's a million counter narratives out there that are actively oppressing you into forming a different opinion. So when we talk about like nonviolence or nonviolent resistance as a value, there's a million counter-narratives around there that say this is not possible in the world that we live in. The only way to fix the world is through force and power and strength in some militant way. And we just have to be the right guy with a gun. So as soon as you proclaim peace and shalom, there's a million things in your body that say, there's no shalom here, there's no peace here. I don't know if I'm ever going to see this vision that I believe in. But trust that the vision is there. So you have to discern these counter-narratives that are there that will immediately put you back in your place. You might be a woman in here and say, man, if 20 women have preached here, I want to be one of those women. And then all of a sudden, you somehow start talking to yourself about, yeah, but they probably pick the best of the best here. And they probably, are looking for those, Fuller students. And they're probably like, what would I say? Like, I couldn't be like that person. And that's the beauty. You don't have to. So there are these ways in which when we imagine counter-narratives come up, so we have to introduce this process before we ever get to this idea of doing or hearing, or what I'm now naming as epiphany and practice. Because epiphany and revelation is constantly coming. The same way I looked at this verse as like, I don't want to read that verse. That's not the verse I'm going to preach today. And then like this agitation that leads to an epiphany, that what if you did revisit this verse and it's a part of your healing? And what if you expounded this verse under who you are and your wisdom today, rather than that 19-year-old kid? And that's the story we want to tell. That's the liberation we want to introduce. That epiphany, when it comes to scriptures, is not about reading what's right, that the Bible's plain and says it and that settles it. It's about seeing Christ and having like epiphanies out of what Christ is saying, doing, and living, the life, love, and justice of Jesus. Watching the Spirit move and wondering, could the Spirit do that here and now in me? And it might not look the same. And this is the problem, is we create a system out of everything in the Western church. How many burning bushes were there in the scriptures? This is not a trick question. How many burning bushes? One. Why do we take that burning bush and then we want to make it a system for something that, like, as a contemplative, I think every bush is probably on fire. I just can't recognize it yet. But the point is not to now create a system that we somehow can conjure up burning bushes now, or how many donkeys spoke. How many times did Jesus quiet a storm? If there's uniqueness in these stories, then how might the Spirit also uniquely show up in ways where you get to tell the story and you're like, what? God showed up in chai tea or cha? In your grandpa's cha? How? That's not, where is that in the Bible? I don't see that in the Bible. But that's the liberation I'm trying to give us and gift us today. Okay, I'm going to do this really quickly. I'm not trying to create a system. I'm trying to give a framework. You can disagree with it. You can add 5 things, 4 things. You can turn it into a circle, whatever it is. But I will also do that. This is not a linear thing for me. It's kind of a cyclical thing that goes from knowing to unknowing to a new knowing. That when we, the things we know them because we've received them. And sometimes those things fail us. And we realize there's no substance in that. And it leads to this orientation of not knowing. Then it's like you question all truth. Do I even know anything? Right? But then if we stay long enough, this epiphany will give rise to a new knowing that we can step into, an embodiment. But as soon as we think that's the way, now it could work backwards, because then you can have this new knowing, and you could think, oh, I've arrived. I finally figured it out. I went from knowing, unknowing to new knowing. Now I'm here. Ask me any question, right? Sometimes the new knowing, being hit straight on the head with something you've never experienced before, all of a sudden creates that same disorientation to an unknowing that maybe taps into something you've known all along. So this is both and. This is swinging back and forth, and then the Spirit, who's the wind, is not doing whatever she wants. So, this is what I have for you. This is hopefully a way in which, if you're taking a photo or taking notes or whatever, that it just helps you liberate and give you permission. That's my whole point here, is to give you permission, which you don't need from me, but sometimes you do need it from the places that have been so repressive in the past. So this is yours to, yes, we want to be hearers and doers, but we want to anchor that and even create room to reconsider, reimagine, and then discern through wisdom that leads to newness of epiphany and newness of practice, a new way of being and becoming. So, real quickly, was that a clap? I can't see back there. Or was that a tap? I love our kids. So, this is it. This is what I have for you. What I'd love to do is maybe debrief a little in community. I'm going to invite Kristen up real quick. I'm going to have Rob grab a mic. We've done this every week, and Inez assured me that you guys love this. So you better come with some good reflections. We skipped a community debrief just for the sake of time. Part of what we had skipped was just asking a question of allowing you to share a little bit about what your formation process or what that experience was of growing up in a church where it was listen and obey or hear and do. And that could be positive or beautiful. So there's still room for that. But also, in this way, are there any questions or thoughts about holding a more expansive and explorative way of formation in our faith journeys? So just like, really this can lead to other things, but talking about imagination, wisdom, epiphany, practice. This could be curiosity. This can be affirmation. You already see things this way. In fact, there's this psychologist who says it this way. This is a communal wisdom thing. But I'm inviting Kristen up here because Kristen is wise. Kristen is brilliant. Kristen has formed us in so many ways in our church. What number woman were you when you preached? Do you remember? 16. I think you were 16. She's preached here. She's shared her story. So I wanted this to be a little bit more rounded out with us. So is there any question? We're not going to go there yet, Nicole, just to the question. Is there anything that's arising or a better question that you might have, or clarity or anything? And I'm going to sit with some awkward silence because that's something I'm still learning to do. But Rob will hand a mic to anyone that has anything that they might want to add, nuance, ask a question, be curious about. Anyone? Anna? Right here, Rob. And then if you still have a question, throw your hand up so Rob just can identify it as well. We've had some really good questions along the way.
Test.
There we go.
Maybe this will turn into a question as I go, but I had this really early on in your message. And actually, when Jason and I were rehearsing for worship today, we did a song. I'll try to keep this like a short little story time, but we did a song called He Won't. And I didn't register that's the song we were doing until we were rehearsing it. But it was actually a song back at the church I was at before this one. I was in a phase of I worked there, I was on the worship team, and I suddenly started having this reconstruction, deconstruction journey with my faith, specifically regarding God's identity and being like, wait, is God, I don't think God is a man. Like, I don't think that's something that resonates with me or I think is biblical. And I remember like talking to staff members that I was really close with and had a relationship with and kind of getting like almost laughed at and just like not taken seriously with my journey. And then the day, like a few days after that, we had Sunday and we were gonna do that song, and it's very he heavy. And I remember like just having like a pretty negative interaction with one of the leaders, like staff members that was like pretty high above me and like way older than me, and he was just kind of putting down my questions. And I remember doing that song and feeling really heavy with it and not feeling like I could, I don't know, just feeling sad that I wasn't in a place where I felt safe enough to wrestle with this. And then kind of this like full circle moment where now I'm here doing a song like that. And I've done songs that say he and things like that, and we've been able to like change the pronouns to make it more inclusive, but also being able to do this, not change anything, and feel like you were kind of saying, like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, it can still, I don't know, just like it's the same thing, but looking at it through a different lens and in a community where I feel safe enough. It's like I can call God he here, but I can also call God she if I want to, and all sorts of things. And so I just kind of, it was like a cool thing that I was like, that's what you're talking about. And then I had kind of the exact same experience with this song, but not really a question, but it just moved me, so.
No, that's good. And so on part, Hannah was up here sharing last week, and I encourage you guys to go listen about reimagining worship, and she shared some of this. But the ability of what I'm hearing to revisit something and to step into something and kind of see it with those healed eyes that come through liberating your own story and then being empowered here to make those calls. You never email an Ezra and say, hey, can I change this pronoun? And we go, never. It just, we just get to witness that because that offers you the freedom to heal and sing and lead. Do you have any reflections on pronouns and your experience?
Hello?
Check, 1, 2.
Microphone check, 1, 2, 3.
There we go.
Hey. Let's see, pronouns. I just remember being in a seminar at my previous church organization, and they were asking about the pronouns of God. And they were like, is God a man, a woman? And the person just flat out, he was a scholar, biblical scholar, he was just like, I would venture to say that God is all genders. And he just left it at that. And after that, I remember going into just different languages. Not all languages are gendered. Not all of them are doing el, elia. Like in my family's language, well, one of the languages, Tagalog, they use siya, which we're gonna see in a prayer, and that just means they, honestly. That doesn't, I'm not trying to make a political stance, but if anything, it just really expanded how I see God, and the qualities that I see in a woman are also qualities that I see in God and that they receive from God. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
I got some snaps. Alex?
Do you want to say hi, Leo? All right. Sorry, we have a little adorable distraction back there. Thank you, Mondo, for your sermon. I feel like I was hearing a theme of returning to the present, right? Finding God through the slowing down of just noticing, using imagination, engaging with what we have, and seeing our own spiritual formation as this process of re-engaging with God in new ways. I'm curious for both of you on the stage, what are some both maybe personal and communal practices that you've found to be helpful in holding a more expansive way of formation? Yeah.
I'll go first. I think when I was in the season of deconstruction, pretty much taking apart what my past church experience had been, I ended up finding a ministry in Chinatown in Manhattan, and it was run by women, like women scholars, women pastors, and they facilitated a space where we would practice silence and contemplation. And being in a city like New York, it's kind of like everything's coming at you at once. And so to sit there in the middle of Chinatown and to practice silence was very formative. And then we would go on silent retreats where it allowed me to it allowed me to reconnect to a depth in myself and to a depth of my spirituality that wasn't judged. I can be pretty intense. I was like raised Catholic, and then I went to a Pentecostal church, so just very intense examples. But I remember just spending time in those ancient practices of meditation, like sitting in a garden and just looking at a leaf and saying, wow, Lord, this is a beautiful leaf, and this leaf works in this ecosystem this way. It just gave me such a big way of looking at how all of creation participates in worship, in giving refuge or creating beauty, just something as simple as a flower that's just so beautiful to look at. So observing nature through silent practices was really helpful for me.
So good. I'll kind of nuance it a little bit, but something that I think was liberating for me was to relieve anxiety from like my equation of faith. There's lots to share there, but I just don't have an anxious presence with like right and wrong in community. So when someone says something to me, there was a part when my body would just react because it was like, that's wrong, like, you know, and I'd have to like figure out, oh, cool, man, like, have fun witching, and there's now just this liberty, and it's not passivism, it's not not caring, it's not taking the gospel not seriously. It's just literally, part of it was realizing that I could trust the living Christ always, and it comes from a theology of ascension it's not that God is that the right hand is not a geographic location. It's this language of dominion that God is now everywhere, always, at once, and there's no place apart from Christ. So what does that actually do in the cosmos, in the midst of things? I grieve, I lament, but like the anxiety to like fix a person or a situation or a theology, like it is not an impulse anymore in community. And I'm so grateful for that, because that way of being sucked. To have to like always feel like you're the only person right in the room and you got to fix everyone, it's awful. It's not the Spirit of Christ. So I offer that, if that's helpful. Y'all, we'll pause there. If there's anything else you want to bring up, feel free to do that. I want to release Kristen to give us our prayers of the people today, and then we will come to the table through communion, and then we'll get close to concluding our service. Sorry.
Hello. Today's prayers for the people have intercessions in only 4 languages. It is not an exhaustive representation of our community. We also have people that speak Arabic, Afrikaans, Xhosa, Zulu, French, Creole, and Japanese, just to name a few. I know it is the hope that this church hears from all people and all tongues. These translations also come from members of our community. Please join me in expanding this act of cultural hospitality. So if your native language or heart language is Mandarin, Spanish, Korean, or Tagalog, please recite these languages as a gift to the church by participating in the intercessions with me. When I lift my hand, or my arm in this case, the rest of the congregation may respond with the all. So let us lift our hearts. Lord, we come to you as curious misfits, beloved caretakers, aspiring healers, prophetic outcasts, prodigal challengers, and unapologetic sojourners. We surrender our work and prayers to you. Shana, 愿你能听到我们的祈祷。 In your gracious mercy, we ask you to inspire our imagination to recover sacred spaces in Pasadena. We look to the resilience of your creation, like the arroyo willow whose roots hold together the soil and provide shelter for all creatures. Let new branches sprout from past wounds to give refuge for the wounded, questioning, abandoned, brokenhearted, and weary. Roguemos al Señor. We welcome the cynic, the lost, the vulnerable, the skeptic, the undone, and those in process. Let us learn from each other. When our faith is dull, animate our hearts to resist insecurity, and remember, abundance doesn't come from knowledge, but by expanding our tables. May we be moved by the compassion and the holy mischief of Christ. 주님, 우리 기도를 들어주세요. Holy Spirit of praying grandmothers, rest on us. Let our hearts be unveiled and unashamed to walk along our neighbors, to midwife their dreams, tarry with their tears, and breathe life into fallow promised lands. Through the ever-changing glory of our witness, may our cups overflow, bellies be full with laughter, native tongues be heard, and stories be unbound by the author and perfecter of our faith. Sha Noah.
Thank you, Kristen. As we turn towards the table of the Lord, the ancient church, the culmination of the ancient church for a very long time, was the table, not a sermon. So regardless of what we do at the church we hope for, whether it's some form of TED Talk or homily or sermon or communal thing, the thing that remains the same is this table and the invitation to come to this table and for it to be an open table for all bodies, all languages, basically anyone that fit the script of that prayer, which is so beautifully written, is welcome at this table. And I'm going to invite Mike and Elizabeth, who are going to serve us today, communion, and then you'll come as soon as they are ready, grab the elements, return to your seats, and then we will take them as one. Together, let us take the body and the blood of Christ in remembrance and proclamation. Amen. A couple of announcements before we go. A couple special ones. I'm going to invite Moonsong and Rocio to come up in a second. As always, for those that wish to connect with the pastoral team, myself or Inez, you can do so. I don't think anyone's on slides over there, so there we go. Next one. There we go. As always, this is never going to change, but this is an open invitation. It's not the only invitation, but to fill out a form, and we'd love to meet you in person, over Zoom. We prefer in person over something to drink or eat. So that invitation is open for anyone new exploring the church or anyone just in need of pastoral connection. You can give what the church we hope for in radical, sacrificial, and generative ways. I didn't get that right. What is it? There we go. Joyfully, generously, and sacrificially by visiting the Give page and or by texting that number. We appreciate that support as a faith community that helps us be this beloved community moved by the Spirit to follow the life, love, and justice of Jesus. And then next week, we will not be here. So everyone hear that, and then everyone tell your neighbor that's not here. It'll also be in the email, and it has been in the email, but we will have our end of the summer. Sorry, I lied. I'm getting way ahead of myself. We got Alicia next week preaching as our 20th woman. There we go. Okay, see, I had to correct. I was getting excited. In 2 weeks, we will be here next week. In 2 weeks, we will not be here. End of summer picnic, park down the street that we pass every time we come here, unless you're coming from Altadena. Sunday, August 30th, 4 to 5, same time as our service times. But we need your RSVP if you're coming. So it's in the email. It'll be in the email. It'll be on social media later this week. But if you can RSVP and it's a potluck and just tell us what you're bringing, and that would be great. And that will make the communal effort of feeding everyone. That's surely going to be a special time. We got some fun stuff planned for the kids as well. And then later in September, this is also, even though it's in September, we'd love to get these signups soon. That we are doing a Pasadena race in place with the Center for Restorative Justice. That is one of our partner organizations here in Pasadena. Inez also serves on the board. But they are doing a special pilgrimage through Pasadena's history, including its racial history, both of the Black community, other ethnic communities. But this one will also emphasize the Latino community. So this will be unique, and it's for our 3 churches. So Casa Grande churches, Pasadena Mennonite, Conexión, and our church, before we open it up to the public. So if you want to go from our church, there's scholarships, there's ways of doing it. Don't let money be the problem. This will be from 9 a.m. to 4. It includes, I think, breakfast and lunch, a shuttle, and the full experience. I've never been on one yet, so I'm excited to go. But we really want anyone who fills the invitation to be a part of this and to learn about, if not the community you're living in, the community that we worship in. So that will be that. And then lastly, we have groups starting and launching. We took a hiatus through the summer. Those are relaunching in September. This will go to the page where all the groups are so that you can see there's a couple community groups, including, I believe, Pasadena Community Group. Is that correct? That is open. Jason, Mike, Janet, and who else is leading it with you? Is it just you guys? And Tammy. That community group is open. It's a great community group. There's some spots there. There's some other affinity groups. And then we have 2 new groups starting out of one household, which is unique. I think they're very competitive with one another. And like, if you're doing something, I'm doing something. So I want to invite Moonsong and Rocio up in any order that you wish. Moonsong is starting something. There we go. There we go. That is geared towards men or those who identify as men. That is really, I remember the heart of this, something that Moonsong said he wants to create a space that really is for him and then others. So he's not looking to fix men. No, there's no doing that. But to create a space that is unique for them to be known. Do you want to share anything else? I know that there's a description, but what's your heart for this starting September 3rd?
I feel like you said it really well. I just wanted to start a group because I need more guy friends. So I figured, why not start a men's group? But yeah, at the heart of all this is really just not just to get together and hang out, but really just to, I guess the way I describe it is just to learn how to be intimate with each other as men. There's one thing about being vulnerable where we can open up and be open and honest and be authentic. But to me, intimacy is the next step where we do that together. Not just me doing it and you hearing it, where we get to share that together as a collective, as a group. And so what I'm hoping for this men's group to be is a space where we as men can learn how to do that. It's hard enough to be vulnerable as men, but to do that together and to be intimate with each other is just a whole nother level. And so what I'm hoping to do is hoping to have and grow together with you guys is just create that space where we can feel safe, open, and feel heard and accepted and validated with each other. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
you did say it better. Yeah.
So
Rocio?
did I win?
I don't know yet. She's gonna come up. But when we talk about the effects of patriarchy, that was a part of that. Is not just to get together, be vulnerable, and friends. Intimacy. Pairing intimacy and men and machismo and all these worlds that form us. I'm sure that probably scared a lot of men in this room. Oh, intimacy? I'm down to hang out, throw some beanbags, eat some burgers, but that's the heart behind this. So I hope you hear that. That'll be starting September 3rd. It's all the info's there. All right, Rocio. Rocio will be starting a book club, and I love this because it's a book that some in our community are already reading, and you may have also read it. But the invitation and heart behind this story is one that emerges from experiences and narratives of our migrant community in our church. So,
Yeah, so I'm going to start a book club of this book called Solito. We're only going to meet 2 times. And basically, this book is about a 9-year-old who migrates on his own from El Salvador to the U.S. and the stories of his migration. And I know that he's not some anomaly, that we have a lot of neighbors and cousins and siblings and friends who have gone through this. And so my hope is just for us to learn, and I think it's going to be a very deep and kind of emotional book, and so I think it would be good to do it in community. So if you can sign up, the first time that we meet, I'm thinking we're going to read through 1/3 of the book, and then the second time a month later, then we'll read the next 2/3 and discuss it.
yeah. And that meeting's going to be all kinds of things. Might even include some tears and laughter. So those are 2 exciting things that you can get more information on through that QR code or through the newsletter. Let's end our service and stand for our benediction. This benediction was written by our pastoral intern, Jasmine Altini, and it holds all 8 values. And we've been saying it since July as a way of forming these values in our benediction. So with your hand in a posture for receiving, maybe read this. May the God of radical love, who has always been concerned for the most vulnerable, continue to center the margins. May God be with us in our peaceful resistance and sacred solidarity as we stand against all that oppresses and harms beloved community in us and through us. May we continue to see the liberation of our stories as we empower women and reimagine worship together. May we courageously reclaim for ourselves a benevolent God who cannot be taken from us, and may we grow towards one another, becoming familia in our today and in our tomorrow. Amen. You may go in peace.